Michael, seems like a pretty big deal to be starting the first game of a playoff series, in particular, given your season. How does that feel?
Feels great. I was definitely happy when Schulte told me, and it's just another opportunity to go out there and prove ourselves as Padres. And I mean, with this staff, how we performed the whole year, it definitely feels like an honor. But I also know that we have a bunch of guys that are going to dominate right behind me. So it's definitely a fun time to get that call from Schulte. But we obviously got work to do.
Was there any level of surprise given that there is Dylan Cease and Joe Musgrove and like, I'm sure it's the 7th game of the World Series that kids dream about, but to start the opener of a playoff, like how much of a fulfillment of a dream is that?
Yeah, I think it definitely lined up just because I was supposed to go on Sunday, that last game of the season, and then getting bumped makes it so that we're all on kind of normal-ish rest. But, I mean, yeah, they're studs that could also have gone game one, so it feels really good, and I'm very excited for that opportunity.
I think Mike said you learned Saturday. At that time, there were 3 possible teams you could face. Then, as of like 20 minutes ago, there were 2. Now it's the Braves. How have you gone about prepping for who you might face? And now that it's the Braves, what do you make of what that challenge is?
Yeah, wild day today. I did the first 4 hitters of all 3 lineups in preparation. I basically had all the Diamondbacks just in case I was pitching that Sunday. But then I had the first 4 guys because I didn't want it to be a mad scramble to get all 9 in. And there's also a chance that we end up facing the other team that we don't play. So I got a little head up in that game. But it's going to be a good battle. I know the Braves just went through a crazy day, and we're hoping to give them a little bit more craziness.
Can you go a little more into that? Like when you say you prep for each guy, like how much time and effort is doing that much more than what you maybe normally would have done?
Yeah. It's not as much more as you'd think. I was just asked by one of my teammates the other day what I do in my free time, and watch baseball was my answer. So I already had some notes on a lot of the guys. Obviously, I faced the Mets earlier. I didn't face the Braves, faced the Diamondbacks earlier, so I had some previous notes on them. So my focus was more on the Braves, just because I hadn't faced them this year. And then it's fun for me. I get to watch their approach against all different pitchers and different situations, and hopefully execute when I'm out there.
It's a kind of generic one that we've asked you in different ways throughout the season, but now that you've completed the regular season, like what was the biggest key to making that transition into a full-time starter and to making it work as well as it has?
I think a couple things. Routine was definitely one of them. As a reliever, you couldn't get on a routine really. You had to be ready every day. So being able to make those adjustments throughout the week were huge, but also being in the weight room and in the training room and making sure that I was healthy every 5th day was a big one. But then mid-game, it's really just finding the soft contact. That's been a huge thing of mine that I had to learn how to even scout for. As a reliever, I just wanted to go for swing and miss. And if I walked you, I walked you. I wasn't going to walk 4 guys in the inning. So I was just going to go for as much swing and miss as I could. Obviously, as a starter, you want to be able to provide length to the team. And if you go out and go after swing and miss every pitch, you're never going to go deep into games.
Michael, the Braves just won, so they obviously are doing something other than announcing their starter, who you'll face. But I think most people would be surprised if it's not Chris Sale at this point. What would that matchup mean? I know you're worrying about your own day, but they're bringing clearly maybe the favorite for the Cy Young Award on the other side in the dugout.
Yeah, I'd say definitely the favorite. He's an ultimate competitor. I remember watching him growing up, all throughout college. It is something that, as the opposing pitcher, I don't actually have to face him. So it's never been something that I've really focused on. I also have a ton of confidence in our hitters and our lineup, and I know how we grind through at-bats. And coming off a couple days off, coming off a really crazy road trip and the day before, I'm hoping that plays into our advantage. But I still have a ton of confidence, whether we're facing the Cy Young or anybody else.
Michael, in the context of this being your first season as a full-time starter, you set very lofty goals back in spring training about the innings number. You came very close to the 180 you set. In the context of the trade in the winter, setting those goals, getting through this season, first time as a full-time starting pitcher, What does this mean to you to get a game one start for this caliber of team in the postseason?
It's everything that I set out to be. Like you said, I failed in that 180 innings, but I hope to make it up and get to 200 still with a World Series appearance. So I think it's everything that I wanted. There are obviously a ton of things that I still can learn from and be better at next year. But now it's just putting up as many zeros as possible and giving the team a chance to win every time out.
Mike, I know we asked you the other day a little bit about 2020, what that experience here was like and just how strange that was. What do you remember about it? The weirdest part of that experience, aside from pitching in an empty stadium, was being part of that bubble.
Yeah, I was on in the visiting clubhouse wearing a mask at all times. No fans in the stands, and honestly, I was just happy to be there because I was not on the roster for the I think it was wild card against Cleveland, and then got added to the roster when we played the Rays. And that's something that I know I was just talking to a bunch of our media guys. Like, I can't wait to see this place in the playoffs. Obviously, I did see it in the playoffs, but nobody was in the crowd, and nobody wanted either the Yankees or the Rays to win. But the fans here are absolutely nuts, and I am very excited to see what we can bring.
I think it was Kyle behind the plate for those 2 innings you threw. What's it meant to have him here with you this first season, and for you two to have this experience together, presumably a couple tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely a huge piece in that trade. I think it was instrumental for me to just have a familiar face to not only see every day, but be able to work with every day and know how to communicate with them immediately and face hitters, read swings. I can have that trust in him immediately getting here. But I'm sure if you ask everybody else in that clubhouse, whether it's staff, players, he's a huge part in just the overall atmosphere in that clubhouse. He's a little ball breaker, but comes to play every single day. You know that he's overly prepared. You know that he has the opportunity, like he did a couple days ago, to hit a game-winning home run. And everybody is absolutely pumped when he plays well because we're always rooting for him really well. So he's been an integral part in this team the entire year, and very excited to see how he calls the game in a playoff atmosphere.
Hey, Michael, you touched on the atmosphere here, but could you elaborate just on what your experience has been like pitching at Petco Park, the crowds that they've had, and just your expectations for what it'll be like for you to pitch in that type of environment, now heightened beginning tomorrow?
Yeah, I've heard about that 2022 playoff run, just what they did, and I think that's incredibly uncomfortable for an opposing team to come into. I even think throughout the year it played into our advantage where, like I've said before, we would face a non-divisional sub 500 record team on a Wednesday, and we're selling out, and it's just it's a lot to come into that atmosphere, and then knowing that they're going to be even louder and probably even more somehow, it's going to be a very tough time for our opponent and something that we're going to have to feed off of. And I can't wait to turn up my pitch comm and make sure I can hear everything, but it'll be a very fun time for me tomorrow.
Following up on that, Michael, are you someone who will feed off the adrenaline of the playoffs in the crowd, or do you have to try to hold that in check a little bit when you go to the mound?
Definitely feed off of it. I think that was something that really helped me actually as a reliever, because you come into those big situations in the end of the game, and that's actually where the fans are even louder or booing you harder if you're on the road. And I think it's one of the most satisfying things to either hear that crowd erupt or hear that crowd go dead quiet. And so it's definitely something that will be a very fun thing for me to do and be able to control my emotions, but also feed into that to elevate my game in any way it could.
Michael, do you feel like you guys have somewhat been in playoff mode since the Astros series here at Petco Park a few weeks back?
Definitely. We had a bunch of off days, which were great throughout September, but we also played a bunch of playoff teams and played them very well. I think that the crowd atmosphere plays into that. It felt like a playoff atmosphere, but then also the opponent that you're playing is something to really go after. And because we were never fully comfortable in our wild card spot, we were obviously still going after the division at the time. We knew that every loss was almost devastating. So as we were going out there, we had to win every series and play it like it's a win or go home. And I'm very excited to say that we were able to get to this point.